Jesus died on the feast of Passover, just like Moses predicted 1,500 years before his death. Moses said that Jesus would die on the feast of Passover. Passover is on the 14th day of the month. And this is verified when Pontius Pilate said, "You have a tradition that I release unto you a prisoner on the day on Passover. Who you want me to release, Jesus or Barabbas?" And so they chose Barabbas. So Jesus died on the feast of Passover, just like Moses predicted 1,500 years before it happened. And so Passover was on the 14th day of Nisan, on the 14th day of the month. So Jesus died on the 14th day of Nisan. The next day is the 15th day of the month, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread is a Sabbath. It's a Sabbath day not because it's the seventh day, but because it is a holy convocation or designated or appointed Sabbath. So you had two types of Sabbath. You had the seventh day, and then you had holy convocations that happened during the feast days, and they were appointed Sabbath, special Sabbath appointed by God. And so the 15th day of the month, the day after Jesus died, was a special Sabbath. It was a holy convocation because it was the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and it was a holy convocation or a designated Sabbath. And so Jesus died on the 14th. They tried to get his body in the ground before sundown, but they didn't quite make it. And so because they didn't make it, they buried him after sundown. It was another day. Another day, their day started at sundown. So he was buried on the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is the 15th day of Nisan. He stayed in the grave 3 days, the 16th, the 17th, and the 18th day of Nisan. We know that because we see the women who came to the tomb. They followed him to the tomb on the 15th at sundown. And so the 15th day at sundown was a Sabbath day, or the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So they went home and they observed the Sabbath day. They did no work. On the 16th day, they made spices. It said they prepared spices. And then on the 17th day, which was the actual Sabbath day, they rested. So you had 2 Sabbath days to fall, just as Moses predicted. The 15th was the Sabbath day because it was the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. 2 days later, the actual Sabbath day came, and that's when the women rested. And then the next day, early in the morning, on the first day of the week, they bought spices. And he rose on the first day of the week, which was the Feast of First Fruits. Paul even calls Jesus our first fruits in 1 Corinthians 15 chapter. Twice he calls him our first fruits because that's what Moses said. Paul confirms what Moses said. In 1 Corinthians 5 and 7, he calls Jesus our Passover because that's what Moses said. Paul confirms what Moses said. So Jesus died on Passover, the 14th day of Nisan. He was buried on the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the 15th day of Nisan. He was in the grave 3 days, the 16th, the 17th, and the 18th. And he rose on the 18th day of Nisan, the first day of the week, which is the Feast of First Fruits. And so it happened just like Moses said. He died on the 15th, on the 14th. He was buried on the 15th, and he rose on the 18th, just as Moses predicted 1,500 years before it even happened.